So let's go to our transverse plane hip assessment. Obviously there's two ends to the transverse plane, one being internal rotation, one being external rotation. And what we're going to do is start off by looking at the internal rotation of my left hip. As always, we're comparing what's happening in my left hip compared to what's happening in my right hip. So first thing that we're going to do is we're going to have a look at how well my pelvis moves over my femur. Remember, if both bones rotate in the same direction, the proximal one's rotating faster, it actually means that the distal one is internally rotating. So in this case, both bones are going to be rotating in the same direction, that would be external, but because the pelvis is travelling faster, it creates internal rotation of the hip. So the first thing that I want to do is create an equidistant circle. And what I mean by that is one of the ways that people can cheat this test is just to use the adduction of the opposite hip and kind of move their leg in. So by creating an equidistant circle the whole way round, we're making sure instead of using motion in my right hip, I'm assessing what's happening in my left hip. The other thing that we want to make sure is that the people aren't leaning too far onto the touching leg. So we're just going to do a little toe touch, and a little toe touch is the operative word. So what a lot of people do is when they haven't got good motion in the hip, they move their weight forward onto the opposite leg to try and kind of take the emphasis away from the standing leg, and it's the standing leg that we assess. So if you imagine that you've got a big circle around you and you've got some degrees on it, even better if you've got a mat with some kind of degrees put on it, or if you can make some tape on the floor that can give you an indication of some real degrees or coordinates. That's really cool for measurements, especially if you have to record that kind of thing for any kind of insurance purpose. So I'm going to assess my left hip. I'm going to create an equidistant circle. Again, are you assessing what's happening at the upper body? Are you assessing what's happening at the knees? Are you assessing what's happening in terms of the foot? Any kind of strange movement in other places tends to tell you that whatever the person's doing isn't really working for them at the hip, that they have to make another movement to try and get the movement done. Remember, all motion is kind of task driven. So I'm just going to do a little touch, and I'm just going to move my right leg round to the left until I really can't move anymore. And as we can see, that kind of is probably just beyond 45 degrees. So maybe about, if I'm being generous to myself, of course, maybe about 50 or 55 degrees. So let's, before we go to a single leg, just simply assess left to my right. So again, I create an equidistant circle and I'm rotating the pelvis round, not just turning my femur, my left femur, I'm actually rotating my pelvis over my right femur. But I'm coming round, and as we can see there, I get a little bit more. So I probably get to, well, or maybe similar. So actually, we see some kind of symmetry in my hips in internal rotation, which is pretty cool because I don't have a lot of symmetry in my body, so even a little bit is worth having. So let's go and see if I can use that motion in my hips when I go to a single leg scenario. Oftentimes, what I have when I'm on two legs can be different to what I have when I'm on one leg, and that can be a real difference or an indicator of injury likelihood, just simply because it's no good to have motion that you can't control. So let's go to a single leg on my left and see if I can use all of those kind of 50 to 55 degrees. And as I turn around, I really feel that kind of pull me back. Again, we're looking for stability and the ability of someone to move. And I can move stably to around maybe just under 45, maybe 40. So actually there's still motion within my hip that I can't access when I go into a single leg scenario and bring in kind of the motion and stability element. So that's probably something that I would look at, that the fact that I have range but I can't use it when I'm unstable. Now let's go to my other leg, which had a similar amount of motion, but as you can see, I fell over. Let me get my leg up, and actually I can probably use most of that motion on a single leg. So on my left leg, we can see that I have motion, but I struggle to use it. Other people, you'll see much more of an issue with the range in terms of asymmetry between left and right. With myself, it's a mobility issue, or a stability issue rather than simply a range issue. So that's internal rotation. I just moved my leg around. So what do we do for external rotation? Well, it's probably exactly the same thing, but in the opposite direction. So what I'll do now is, if I'm going to assess the left hip, I rotate round to the right. I rotate my pelvis away from my femur being the standing leg here. So all I'm going to do is just rotate my leg away. Again, we're looking to see, does that foot kind of fall in? Am I seeing the knee fall in excessively? Am I seeing the chest move over? So all I'm going to do is just touch round, just touch round to see how far I can get. And probably to about 135 degrees. So that would be 135 on my left hip. Let's assess left to right, and again I'm going to create that equidistant circle, making sure that my body can move in a stable way. And as I move around on that right hip, you can see I can probably get a little bit more. So let's have a look at the motion and stability aspect. So if I'm standing on my right leg, how much of that 135 can I access? And even though I fell over a little, I can probably access about 90 degrees. So now I go onto my left hip, and as we see there, I can access a lot less again. So oftentimes when we see an issue in the same side hip, in both internal and external, or flexion and extension, or ab and adduction, it tends to be a kind of a neurological close down of the area, or maybe a capsular problem rather than a muscular problem. So again, we saw a motion and stability issue on my left side rather than a kind of range of motion issue. But internal rotation test, we go around that way, single leg, turn around that way. In terms of external rotation, I go round to the opposite side, and then single leg again, round to the opposite side. If you see someone kind of hunch over, can you put the arms up in the air to try and make the test a little bit harder and stop them from compensating it the way that they want to compensate? That's internal and external rotation.